we've built this cohesion, and we've built this understanding of each other and being a team, and utilizing each other's strengths and picking up where we see weaknesses.
Because they found that a mentally healthy employee is the best employee.
Yeah, I mean, I can't process anything if I'm constantly distracted, if I'm constantly entertained.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another amazing, exciting, and of course with yours truly, Chris Burns, enthusiastic episode of Finding Peaks. I am so grateful to be here and really honored to be joined by our clinical director, Dr. Prince. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's always a pleasure. And one of our amazing, talented primary therapists, Andrea Yockel, and she is a licensed professional counselor candidate. Let's go. Couple months, be an LPC. Yeah, it's so cool having you both on the show. You guys both do tremendous work down on campus. I've been back on campus over the last week, and I've heard each and every one of, specifically you two, your praises from clients that I've had the opportunity to sit with, hang out with. I always ask people, who's your therapist? Do you love them? Or who's your favorite therapist? Is it your therapist? And people speak about you guys in pretty high regard. And so I'm grateful to have you on the show to talk about what it is you guys do, why you do it, and what keeps you moving. So Dr. Prince, a lot has changed since you've been here, January of last year, right?
April.
Oh, so you were a month, okay, April of last year.
End of March is when I was hired, and I came, my first day was first day of April.
I think, I was actually, when you just said that, I was like, who is the most amazing person I've ever hired? I think it might be you.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that'll carry us into, what have been some of the things since you've been here in the short time? We've had a tremendous amount of change. But what are some of the things that you've kind of been a part of clinically that you're really, really proud about, that you guys have been able to institute or insert into the organization clinically, that you've really seen kind of help settle clients, walk them through their recovery process, and ultimately heal?
Yeah, so our clinical team, we have Andrea and one other individual, Alyssa, and you just heard Andrea's been here about a year and a half. They are the OGs of the clinical team.
That's cool.
Because as we walked through with some changes to clinical documentation and things like that, we got a new team. So Alyssa being almost 2 years in August and Andrea being a year and a half, they are our original, at least my original team members from when I got here. So that's the biggest change, but we had such a diverse clinical team. We have male therapists, we have different modalities that our team really specializes in. One of our therapists is advanced trained in personality disorders.
Oh, no way.
We have existential therapists who have advanced training. Andrea herself does really well with DV and has advanced training in that. So that's huge. One of the things that we've done clinically is we've built this cohesion, and we've built this understanding of each other and being a team, and utilizing each other's strengths and picking up where we see weaknesses. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You go to the garage, my office isn't in the garage, in our RV garage where our therapists hang out. But I go in there and it's so interesting that our therapists are talking, well, Andrea knows this well. Let's ask Andrea. Even in the group curriculum, Andrea has very specific days that she runs, and sometimes when she needs a vacation, she's not there, but she's there training them before she leaves, saying, hey, this is how I run it. They do very well. They respond very well to this. So that's huge.
Yeah.
We've also done some changes to the curriculum that the therapists have. They've implemented their own ways and modalities of doing things, and it's worked, and it's worked great for the most part. Some we've ran a couple of weeks and said, this isn't nice.
Okay.
And Andrea, who has advanced knowledge in narrative therapy, that was one of the things that we tried, and Andrea was ready, she was excited, and then she came back and said, that didn't go so well. And we need to change that.
I was gonna say, the clients will let you know.
Yeah, for sure. Like, eh.
You can tell.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, this is not working.
Yeah. And we wrote everything down over the last few months. So we have systems in place now, instead of us just guessing and saying, well, I do it this way, and somebody else, it's very aligned now, and everyone has access to that. And so it takes the guessing and questioning out of our day-to-day experiences.
I love that. And I love that you talked about cohesion and what you guys work on a daily basis and how that shifted, because the curriculum, I think, is really, really important. And I remember when you came in, and I know when you came in as well, our curriculum was really heavy. It was grief, it was identity and purpose, it was shame and guilt. There was these really loaded modules that appeared to really weigh heavily, not just on clients in primary care, but the team. And for whatever reason, I think in the past it created an inability for people to have what you talk about now so clearly, like this multidisciplinary approach to treatment, and it's something special that I've seen over the last year is like, everybody feels on the clinical team, I think for the first time in our company culture, potentially seen, valued, and heard, and you're all in alignment, like moving together, which is really, really special. And how has that been for you, Andrea, since you've been here? Because I know when you got here, a lot of change was happening, a lot of necessary change. But what has it been like for you over the past just over a year, kind of transitioning into Peaks and really coming to fruition to be one of our stronger therapists and obviously one of our most seasoned?
Yeah. It's interesting. I love that you said like Alyssa and I are the OGs. I always like to say I'm the bridge. Like I feel like I'm the bridge between old Peaks culture and new Peaks culture. And I feel really privileged to have come in at the time I did, of kind of change and upheaval, and had that flavor. And I understand what that is. But also coming in knowing what I could see the future would be, and being able to bridge between those two things and carry parts of that culture forward that were helpful, and maybe letting go of some that weren't. Some of those being like, not having boundaries between work and personal life and things like that. Because I think the core of Peaks is always that our clinicians like truly, really, really do care about the guests. And that can be a lot, right? And so you talking about like cohesion on the clinical team, it's not just like, conceptualizing together, it's also a humility and knowing where your skill set is and where you need to hand somebody off to somebody else. Knowing how your own stuff comes in the room. I always say as a therapist, like that's our job, right? Is to know like how my trauma is coming into play and, I need help with this, or can you do this, right? And at the core of it too is like, I genuinely really love everybody I work with. Like we just like on days where we're all there and we get to have lunch together, it's like the best. It's the absolute best. And there's no way you can do this job without having a team like this. I always say, this is a weird job. This is not a normal job. And the only people that understand are the people you do it with, and you have to debrief with them. But in terms of what you're speaking about with the curriculum, all these things with like it being really heavy, like I feel the difference is those elements are still there, but we've learned a way to time them where it's not like boom, 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 and we're kind of processing in between and we're tying things in. Like something I'll often say when I'm running groups is like, hey, you're gonna hear me say this in Grief Week, and then you're gonna hear me teach you this lesson again when we talk about codependency and when you talk about this. There's like this common thread of see how this comes through, right? Which in therapy is always when I'm telling people I'm doing, when I'm listening to you, I'm listening for the theme. Like what is the common theme in all these struggles you're having? And I feel like the curriculum is being formed in this way where that's what we're doing. We're kind of keeping with this theme, right? Of like, oh, look how you are sacrificing yourself over and over and neglecting self.
Seasonally, different times of your life. That's really, really cool. What do you find, you guys both said it, I think differently than like past Peaks culture too, is like this boundary thing. And I think it's really, really advantageous to our clients, but how do you speak to, you can't just go in and be like, hey, you need to do your work, but I kind of need you to do your work, whatever that looks like, or just take great care of yourself. How do you inform that, Dr. Prince, in clinical culture without telling people, and work doesn't necessarily mean everybody has to go to therapy. It might mean get some sunshine, it might mean go for a walk. But how have you been able to inform this thing where you say, hey, in your personal life, take really good care of yourself? Because to Andrea's point, this job can get a little weird and a little disconnected at times. So how do you do that? I
make myself available. And how can I support you? right? We built rapport. I've built rapport with all of my team members, and that's where it started. So they have that comfortability to come to me and say, hey, I need a break.
Okay.
I'm okay running groups, but could you lower my caseload? And then the team, because they are a team, they start to notice too. And so they'll start to come, hey, we should check on this person. And I don't mind taking an extra person if they need a break. And so it's very beautiful, and that's how they've been for the last year.
Yeah, just kind of this open door communication where people can come in and say I'm struggling and not get penalized professionally for it. That's really, really cool. We had a guy in here, we did a podcast, and gosh, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he had a company where he wanted to develop a shame-free workplace for folks who struggle with mental health, to where like it was built into the HR component where you could come and say, hey, I'm struggling with my mental health, and you're not gonna get like axed, or you're not gonna get reprimanded, or 2 weeks later you're not gonna lose your job. They actually have resources in-house because they found that a mentally healthy employee is the best employee, you know? And it's really, really difficult in our field because, Andrea, each and every day you're facing your client, it could potentially be one of the most important days in their life and one of the scariest days in their life. And so what do you do, Andrea, to, just for the viewers out there, because I think this is a really important topic, like, what do you do to make sure that you can be where your feet are when you're going into these things on a daily basis that are really, really heavy and really valuable?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, right? In terms of if I am struggling in my own life, and then all of a sudden here I am maybe assisting someone with clinical support and detox, where they are in like the darkest moment of their life. And so for me, what I'm always reminding myself is, you know, we always have to like kind of leave our stuff to the side, compartmentalize for a minute, but like just really being in that moment with them, like entering their world. And we always use that term holding space, but that's literally what that means, is I'm gonna put my stuff here, right? But then also have awareness of that. And one thing I'll say about Peaks in terms of, is because so many people that work in mental health, right? We're therapists. And we'll tell people like, watch out for burnout. It's against our code of ethics to be practicing when we ourselves are not doing well, right? Like there's a saying which is, you can help your client as long as you're just one shade healthier than them. But there might come a time where in that moment, that day I wake up, I'm not one shade healthier than my client, right? And so that's my responsibility to have that self-awareness and to know that. And one thing I'll say about Peaks is, you're right, there are places you can work where they're gonna preach this and say, we don't want you to go burn out and ask for help. And then when you do, you're gonna be penalized. And that is not true here, right? Like I just took 3 weeks off because my mother's on hospice. And I knew that, and leading up to it, not only was I communicating this and feeling safe, and it's psychological safety. I have psychological safety with my leadership team to say like, hey, just so you're aware, I think I'd said to you months in advance, I go, hey, just so you're aware this is happening in my personal life. I'm like, probably it's gonna be a thing in the near future. And then Pema, you know, who was our wonderful director of family services, she was like encouraging me. She goes, no, I said, I need to take like a week off. She goes, no, you need to take a month. You need to, I have never in my life worked somewhere where a supervisor would say, no, we want you to take a whole month. You need a whole month, and we're going to give it to you, right? And so how can we do that? Like, what does that look like, you taking some time off, and how much do you need? And that's really the truth, and the checking in with one another and knowing one another, like me being able to maybe go to Marissa and say, hey, I noticed this clinician's struggling at home, and they're becoming tearful more often when I'm talking about work, and they're having a hard time compartmentalizing their own stuff, right? Or like this client they were assigned, we didn't realize would trigger their trauma, and maybe they're not the best fit for them right now. That's all part of us also providing quality care to guests at Peaks, as knowing our own stuff. Yeah.
That's really rad. I had no idea about that, and I'm sorry about your loss.
Oh, thank you.
But I think it's really cool that, you know, we're going through Grief Week and we're talking about grief, we're talking about processing grief, and it turns out that you were allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful, and that hasn't been synonymous with our past, and so I call it kind of Peaks 2.0, new culture. It really seems like in the clinical department that you guys have each other's backs, and that's like, that's really valuable to know, especially when you take some time. I've had work situations in the past where I come back from a long vacation and I'm like, did I do something wrong? Did I miss something? Because you know, you leave and everything, they're like, your documentation and this and that. And
like resentment that you took time off.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, like all of my holes showed up when I was gone, you know, and all the stuff I didn't do, somebody else did. And so it's nice to know that we're creating an environment, especially for clinicians when your job is freaking tough and you're going in and you're connecting with these really, really difficult and deep stories, that when you're having a tough time or you're within a deep story, that we allow you to process that wholeheartedly. And frankly, like, clients can feel that, you know, and they can definitely feel when you love your job, when you're feeling supported, when you're mentally healthy. And I think that's really, really enriching to the client experience. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say too, in terms of this idea of boundaries in work, right? It's a different job than in a different profession where you might kind of hold your personal stuff a little closer to yourself, because it's important for my team to know, at least on some level, what's going on with me. You know, where the other day we had a client that got a really awful diagnosis. And had to be transported out to the hospital, and that was triggering for me based on my own stuff. And to have Logan be able to say to me in that moment, he goes, "Oh, buddy, this is kicking up so much stuff for you," right? And the only way he was able to do that for me is because he knows me, right? And having that safety that we know each other.
Yeah.
So
that's really, like, really fortifying too, just to know people have your back.
Yeah.
You know, when you're going through it. And you talked about it, Dr. Prince. How do you all decide when somebody comes in? How do you decide, like, you know, I know you split up the groups with respect to, you know, clinicians are more advanced in these areas or these modalities or have training in this and the other thing. How do you assign clients to individual therapists?
I learned my therapist was the first thing that I did, and what they prefer, because there are preferences. There are individuals who prefer female clients or male clients, and I also learned their specialties. And so when we just recently had an individual enter treatment, well, I guess not recently, but severe domestic violence. And there was no question who that individual was going to go to. They were going to go to Andrea because she is the best in that area. The same thing with one of our clinicians, Holly. She's a social work candidate. If there's sex-related issues, they tend to go to Holly because she is the best on our team at that. And so I learned my therapists, what they specialize in, what they prefer. And so as individuals come in, I read their paperwork and then I divide them up to the best available therapist.
That's cool. Yeah, you getting really to know, like, your team and engaging with them, and not just like in this, like, oh, we do supervision and we do this thing, but like personal, professional, lunch, whatever it is, really get to know the ins and outs so that we can ensure when somebody comes in, it's it's not always a perfect match, right? For sure, but we do our best to get them there. That's really, really.
But I think it's pretty rare that they ask to switch. Even.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
No.
So you both talked earlier about, like, a common thread. When Andrea, you spoke about it pretty clearly with respect to your clients. Kind of a question that I have is, you know, there's a lot going on in our environment. There's a lot of intensity. Cost of goods are through the roof. Everything's really expensive. There's more unpaid mortgages anytime in the United States since 2008. And so you have a lot of intensity coming in, a lot of professionals, a lot of young adults. Have you all been able to see in your work, maybe over the last year or two, that there's somewhat of a common thread based on what's going on in our environment? And how do we speak to that? And I guess, what are you seeing?
What's going on in our environment?
Yeah, is it you know, mature adults, are they coming in? Is it you know, leaders of their household? Is it mothers? Is it you know, is there a common thread that's happening just since like in the pandemic? There was a very common thread coming in the pandemic. Young adults were getting kicked out of high school or colleges, and they were coming in, and they had this kind of disposition of like, why does it all matter? The adults are going crazy, you know. And so there was a very common thread in the pandemic from 2020 to almost 2023, especially with young people coming in. Have you seen environmentally informed, like, just because it's intense right now, you know, we just had a huge election. Anytime there's an election, there's a huge shift, you know, one way or another. And not to mention, like, just from an inflation perspective and just the way everything costs, people are losing things in our environment. I mean, 2 homes went for sale in my neighborhood the other day, and I don't think they wanted to move. And so there's just a lot of pressure out there. Are you experiencing that with your clients?
Yeah, when you're saying this, that as you're talking, I'm thinking of different themes I've noticed over the last 18 months working at Peak specifically that kind of present themselves again and again. And so one, in terms of kind of what's happening politically and on a larger cultural scale that I'm seeing specifically clients in their early 20s, right, where we're entering adulthood. We call that developmental stage emerging adulthood. And what I'm seeing a lot of that comes in for mental health is this overwhelming feeling. It's kind of like a disillusionment or a loss of innocence of like, oh my God, what's happening with Gaza and Israel, and what is this? And oh, the world's a terrible place. And as a therapist, not wanting to invalidate, but I had a client where I was trying to say to her, like, this has always been true. You know, and you are just now learning this for whatever reason. Maybe parents sheltered too much, or somehow they weren't paying attention as an adolescent, and so this wasn't spoon-fed to them in tiny doses. It's like all of a sudden they're getting it like a tidal wave. And I remember her just sobbing and saying to me, like, well, if that's what the world is, I don't want to be part of it. Right? And becoming suicidal, and also having a lot of them having this real altruism of like, I need to help, right? I'm not married, I don't have kids yet, I don't have a career launched, I'm in this period of my life where I can get involved in activism or do something. And the pressure becomes so great that it's the whole like oxygen mask thing of like, where I say, you're in residential treatment right now.
Put your mask on.
We need to help you, we need to get you healthy, and then you can go out in the world and help. But you've become so overwhelmed that this is crippling for you. So I see that one.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, then we see people entering retirement. I've worked so hard for this retirement, and now I'm here, and I realize my identity was my career. And who am I? See that one. Yeah, and then the other one I've been seeing is people early 20s that grew up either, you know, upper middle class or affluent, that just seem to have some distress intolerance, is what I call it. And what's sad is often the parents are self-made, where they didn't grow up with the same privilege, and I'm on the phone with dad going, hey, so you got a lot of money. Let's talk about how that affected your kid, right? And they're like, oh, we tried so hard to give them like normal struggle and like learn these lessons, and you know, kind of how that presents in our early 20s. Kind of a floundering of like, I have this purpose, I feel I'm not fulfilling my potential, but also no one's pushing me to do so, I'm too comfortable. Right? For some of us, like we never do anything until our feet are held to the fire, right? And that's not true for everybody. Or for some of us, it's like, we're just gonna stay comfy as long as we can.
Yeah, it's interesting how those common threads appear kind of like almost generationally, or every 5 years or so. There's these new these new things that you have to battle, and potentially you didn't think you were going to have to face that in your counseling sessions. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I remember in grad school, and they had like a list of reasons, like general reasons people come into counseling, and one of them was turning 40. Right? Like, and so I always remind people that sometimes we just need to go in for like a little defrag as we transition through different phases of our life. And that's normal.
Why, and you said it, you know, middle class, upper middle class, affluent. You know, I grew up thinking, for sure, if you don't have money, you're not happy. And for sure, if you have money, you're going to be happy. And not to mention, the American dream is to, I've said it before, race to the top of Pikes Peak to get the pot of gold and realize nobody's there, right? And so how do we work with people to see that they are more, like, if I find myself saying a lot, it's not important, but you are. How do you get them to go like this and like come inward to really begin to focus on and foster something that has a lot of shame in it or is depressed? And like, how do we transition people inward? Like, it seems so difficult because I was so hyper-focused. Even in my recovery, it's like I started out working in a gas station, like, let me be a house manager. Everything's so externally driven, and people in today's day and age, culturally or otherwise, seem to be so externally focused. And so we have the gift of having them come on campus, we turn down their volume, we take their phone, we give them an iPad, and we say, it's all about you. Probably for the first time in their life, it's all about you. How do you navigate that?
I'm laughing because it's deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's what we see, right?
For sure.
Well, I mean, how many times a week is someone asking for their phone and raging about why can't we have phones, even though they knew they weren't supposed to have phones? Or the other thing we get is, you know, sometimes there's not enough activities after group, like there's no hike, or they canceled the hike because of weather, and what am I supposed to do? I'm like, ooh, sit with yourself.
Yeah. And in longer term recovery, you're like, oh my God, I got a moment by myself. You're like, it's so nice.
Yeah.
No kids, nothing, it was just me. I'll turn on TV, that kind of thing. But I felt, to your point, I can remember when I was in treatment, absolutely not wanting to sit with myself. And any time I had to sit with myself was wildly uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And so I love what the clinical team does, partners with the activities team, and I know you guys are creating a new schedule that's just kind of get people moving and grooving. But I think there's some efficacy to our programming and people sitting with themselves, and I'm certain that most people that are sitting there don't not have something to do, But that's got to be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I can't process anything if I'm constantly distracted, if I'm constantly entertained. When you're talking about this external focus, that's exactly what that is, right? That's a coping mechanism to not look here. Just like codependency and focusing on others is because I don't feel worthy of focusing on me, or I'm deeply uncomfortable with who I am.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a question I often ask people is like, do you enjoy your own company? What did you say earlier about talking to yourself and making jokes? And you go, I like me. Like, I like hanging out with me.
I like myself a lot.
Yeah. Marissa's great. She laughs at her own jokes a lot, which I think is really endearing, and that makes me laugh, right? But that's an example.
Yeah, someone laugh.
All that matters is I laugh.
Like, I'm a great time.
Yeah.
Right? But like, how many people don't feel that? Like, how many people's core belief is, if they really knew me, I'm boring. If I'm not of use to them, I'll be discarded. Right? And so I have to focus externally all the time because this is painful. And so that's, it's deeply uncomfortable. I call it itchy.
Yeah.
And that's where substance use comes in. It's like, I get home after work, I have nothing to do, I'm by myself, like, what do I do? I'll get drunk and watch a movie, and then I don't have to think about me.
Right.
Yeah.
Why, Dr. Prince, why is the youth suicide rate in affluent family systems more than double that of poor kids? Why do you think, like, in your...
Yeah, absolutely. And I would see this. I was in higher education for a long period of time, and just my opinion has to do with what Andrea kind of mentioned, is that they're not being spoon-fed this information. They're not being spoon-fed disappointment, where we see our children in poverty having to face struggles, and maybe a little bit at a time, whatever that is, but it's building resilience every time. Mom can't afford Christmas, so we're gonna get one gift. That kid gets a little, it's hurtful, but they got a little bit of resilience each time. But when our kids are given everything, when they are so protected, they've never had to experience the hurt. The same thing with grades. We are all equal, so we have removed grades from a lot of private schools. We all are on the same playing field. There's no resilience building. And so when the world comes at 18, 19, 20 years old and it hits them, they haven't built little bits of resilience to be able to deal with big issues when we're 18, 19, 20 years old. First heartbreaks, right? Oh, I was so protected, we didn't date. So I never had a girlfriend. They go through an experience where they got a girlfriend at 20 and the girlfriend breaks up with them. And they don't have the ability, the coping skills, the toolbox that could have been built younger to say, yeah, my girlfriend broke up with me for this reason, but I'm okay because I like to sit by myself. I enjoy my own company. I'll go to the movies. I'll go to this festival, whatever that looks like.
That's spot on. I can actually relate to that. You know, growing up, it was like my mom gets a large pizza and there's like 12 of us. I'm like, I want my own large pizza.
Right.
You know, but there's a lot of resilience building in that. Like you don't get a large pizza and you don't get 2 of these Salisbury steaks, TV dinners either. You only get 1. Right. You know, and there's these certain things. And it's interesting you say that, both of what you guys have said, because when I first had kids, I wanted to exclude the struggle that I walked through. Like just get it out of there. So anything that costs money, I got you. Food, toys. I mean, I don't do it anymore because I've learned a lot in the 10 years I've been a father, but I mean, I look at some of the younger pictures of my kids and they got Yeezys on and these Burberry. I'm like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? And thank God I have a really good counselor and just great people around me and great parents that inform not overextending to your kids and showing up presently. And what I learned throughout that process is my kids didn't want all that. They actually wanted me to put my phone down and spend 15 minutes with them on the floor. And that was better than the 4 seasons in Maui. Like, that's cool.
Right.
But anytime my kids are like, hey, Mom, like, do you remember that vacation? He's like, Dad, what I remember about it is, oh, I remember when you were sitting on the beach with me, and we were sitting there and we were talking about turtles, and that turtle came out of the beach, and it was just me and you, and the sun was setting. And Daddy, wasn't that cool? You know, it makes me emotional because it's like those times together, connected, in presence. And I think that's what you all are showing the individuals that come into care is like, you know, we may have got this part a little intense or wrong or whatever it might be, but this path can be yours, and you can curate it alongside the people you care about, and you can have a new experience.
Yeah.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge too how hard it is when you do have the resources to provide your children everything and for them not to struggle, how difficult it is to not provide that.
Yep.
It's so difficult. And I can remember knowing that I needed to correct course when my son was about 3 or 4 and he had broken something. And his response was immediately, oh, we'll just go buy a new one at Target.
Yep.
And I thought,
oh shit. Yeah, Daddy will just go get me a new one on the way home from work. Oh yeah.
Yeah, let me just buy another one, right? And so that's one of the things I joke about my divorce is I was worried that they wouldn't struggle enough. And
I love it.
Having parents like a divorce where I go, they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Yeah,
you know? And,
just give them a little dose.
Yeah. And as I'm sitting here today, my 13-year-old is at work for his dad today doing like hard manual labor. So I'm like, all right, we're going to be all right.
We did all right.
But it is really hard still sometimes to not be like, yeah, I can buy you the $150 shoes because I remember getting bullied for my shoes. And I don't ever want you to feel that pain.
I know,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to look cool because I remember going in there and be like, you look dumb. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So at least you look good, you feel good, right?
Yeah, like if I can just remove that element of shame or you know, feeling less than for them, right? But then also the question being like, well, what did I take away from that experience in my life, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure you both have worked with, you know, affluent families who have the boundary thing right, and how powerful that can be. You know, they're going to show up, they'll show up, but it won't show up in this room, you know, monetary stuff. And we've walked with a lot of people who I think parents have done a good job with that as well. And it's really cool to see that happening, those boundary systems anyway. You know, what would you say, Andrea, is the favorite part of your day?
Oh, my favorite.
Any day during the week, what is it and why?
Oh, morning coffee.
Morning coffee?
Yeah, always. Yeah, I always joke, like as I get older, I've become like an old man, you know? I'm like, I get up before the sun comes out.
I got a black cup
Same.
of coffee.
I'm gonna have black coffee and the paper and a smoke. You know,
Yeah,
That's
so
what, like,
rad.
I wish, you know.
Yeah.
Logan and I always joke, like if smoking was healthy, he's like, oh man, all day? I'd be smoking all day. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, like that morning meditation.
Yeah.
Like especially if no one else in the house is awake. Right? Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm gonna pop. What is your favorite part of your day?
It is the same thing. So all teams at Peaks pick on me a little bit because I am in the chats at between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning because I am up. But what they don't know is that is the time for myself. So what I do is I put our schedule in the chat every morning, and then unlike Andrea, I do drink my coffee and smoke a cigarette.
Yeah, love it.
And watch TikTok. And I do that. My children are asleep. My husband is asleep. And that is my time to ground. And then about 30 minutes later, I say, okay, I can go inside now and get dressed. And so I start that morning routine. But that is that time for myself. Me and Andrea have a similar amount of children.
Similar amount.
I have a large amount of children. I have 4, but one is an adult now, so 3.5.
Going into grad school at 19 or whatever.
Yeah, so. But they take up a lot of time during the day, and so just to have that time to relax is amazing.
Yeah. I love both of your responses because I think what you just responded with is what we're trying to get our clients to anchor into. It's like me first today and then all the other stuff. In the value-based component, like if I take care of myself in the morning and I give myself the time it's a non-negotiable. It sounds like it's a non-negotiable for both of you too. Like this is my time, this is my cup of coffee, this is my thing. And it helps fortify my resilience, my mental health to go face and show up for presently people that have serious needs. So I think that's really, really cool. I would have thought, I think most people on the show would have been like, oh, it's when I get into work and I start doing therapy. And I know you guys love therapy and I know you love what you do. But that routine in the morning, I think, speaks to the recovery process that we're trying to embody and kind of hand off to our clients one day at a time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and I think it's the routine too of being an early riser, and you talking about grounding. It's so important. The work we do, I can't be running in late.
Right.
You know, like, oh, I overslept, and
Yeah.
that's not a thing I can do. Like, I need to come in and like be present and ground into that space before I can actually like be with someone.
Yeah.
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 One of the things, do you guys ground? Speaking of grounding, you guys ever ground? Like just go outside with your feet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and do it?
Yeah.
It's so good. Marissa, have you?
I'm not an outside person, Chris.
We just need to get you
indoors.
We need to get you like cut out a square in your house to where it's like just dirt, and so you can sit there in a chair and just put your feet in it.
We always joke that my children, they were raised in the suburbs, but they're country Louisiana girls at heart because my children do not wear shoes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Half of the time we can't get them in clothes either. So they do all of the grounding for me outside, mud, like my kids are those feral
Are
children.
you forced into the wilderness to retrieve them?
No, Stan's really good. My husband
Stan,
is
get 'em.
really good at like, he takes them on the hikes and dirt in the hair. And they have very curly, Andrea knows this, they have very curly hair. So then the dirt in the hair, like
Oh, yeah.
is like, it's never coming out.
No,
That's great.
So I have to like shake them
deep
out.
in the scalp. You get the sand in there.
I was on campus I was on campus earlier, but I saw her yesterday and the day before. There is a client we have that doesn't wear shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have one at
And I thought it was
PhD
so
too.
cool. So I don't like to wear shoes either, but certainly in professional settings, people, you got to kind of wear shoes. So she gave me the green light the other day. I was like, well, I'm not wearing these. And I took
Hey.
these
Yeah.
off. I was like, are we good? She's like, grounding earth. I'm like, yes. You know, Brandon was actually the first, actually, I'm going to put my shoes on. Brandon was actually the first person to show me that documentary, Grounding Earth. And I went right outside and I stuck my knees or my feet in the grass, and you got to do it for 15 minutes. And I usually lay there. You guys would love this. So I get out of the sauna and I have my underwear on, and I go out in my backyard and I just lay down like this and I put a pillow and I just face the sun for 15 minutes. There's no fences in my neighborhood. There's no privacy. Sometimes my wife will come too. She doesn't wear her underwear, but and I just often think like, what do these neighbors think of this dude? This guy's just lit fuse, man. You know? But I'm out there, I'm just like, oh my God.
They probably think you're the coolest.
They might,
Yeah.
maybe.
They're just like, there's Chris.
Yeah.
His
Or
morning
yeah,
thing.
just
So I always run out in the morning. So when I run out of my house at 6 a.m., I run right out my front door and I run out in the road and I do a spin move and then I start running backwards. And then I run backwards to the end of my road and then I go. And I just wonder
Like you have to rev up.
yeah, like winding it up.
like one of the little wind-up things.
Yeah, and then I go, and I just
You're
wonder
right.
sometimes. I'm like, who's watching me right now? You know,
You're getting caught on someone's doorbell camera. For sure.
They're enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I won't let cars. We have 36 homes in our neighborhood, so I pretty much know like facially like who everybody is. And if I always walk in the middle of the street. It's early in the morning, but if you want to get past me, you gotta wave. You gotta wave.
I'm not moving until you
I'm
wave.
not moving till you wave. And I will literally, happy Monday. And they're like, Chris, get the heck out of my way. I'm like, nope, happy Monday. And they'll just go. I'm like, all right, clear, go. You're gonna have to run me over without a wave. Anyway, just talking about early morning
okay.
process.
You're inviting them to set their tone for the day.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah.
You know? You're saying, let's start it this way.
Exactly.
Let's be happy.
Turn that frown upside down. And it's interesting too, because and I'm sure you guys don't do this either. I think maybe some people believe who are struggling with their mental health, like, oh, they wake up, they feel good. And sometimes it's a battle. It's a conversation. It's like, I want to go for my run or I want to do my meditation, but I'm like, I'm only going to do 6 minutes today because I got things going on. And then I'll say, oh, no, I'll do 8. Or no, I'll do a half mile because I'm tired. And then I get to a half mile, I'm like, yeah, but it's downhill. I'm like, I'm gonna do the downhill and I'll circle back because I'm tired of this thing. And it's a constant battle.
Absolutely.
And we just move through it because I know that part of my day is gonna create the most value for me and the people that need me to show up for them. So I love that you guys have that. I think it's so, so important. Before we end the show today, I wanted to chat with both of you about maybe your favorite client story or outcome or interaction since you've been at Peaks, and why. Start with you, Andrea.
Oh, there's a lot of them. I'm trying to pick one. Oh, geez. I'm trying to think. I have a few. I'm trying to think what is most important. Well, I was going to say there's a client that I feel like we all shared last summer who was highly suicidal. And there was definitely time, on and off M1s, going to PHP, coming back to residential, back into the hospital, back and forth all the time. And this particular client had started buying Lego sets and building things, and kind of one by one coming to the clinicians and saying like, oh, I made you this. So we all have them in our office, but what I knew when this person came across the parking lot and handed me a bonsai tree was that it was a parting gift, right? That they were gift giving because they planned to end their life. And when I accepted that, I didn't say it out loud, but in my head I thought, if you die, I'm throwing this in the trash. Right? Like, don't do
they're hard
this.
enough
This
to
is
take
not
care
what
of.
this is. This is not going to sit in my office as a reminder, right? And it sits in my office today, and they're thriving and doing really well.
You taking good care of it?
Yeah. Well, no, it's a Lego bonsai.
Oh,
It's a
yeah,
Lego.
okay. I'm like,
Lego.
bonsais are so hard to take care of.
And so a client this week said to me, by the way, what is the deal with the Lego things in everyone's office?
Oh, and you get to tell the story.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, that's from a client, and they're alive, and they're doing really well. And I'm so glad this bonsai is still in here.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
I have an orchid.
You have an orchid?
Yeah, I have an
Okay.
orchid.
Yeah, I always wonder what everybody else has.
That's a really cool story. I like that.
Yeah.
How about you, Marissa?
I think mine was from just after summer, and it was not a client that I personally was the individual clinician for, but I worked very closely with Holly. Holly was the individual clinician, and this individual came in, experienced a lot of hopelessness around what he was experiencing, and no one's going to be able to help me. No one is going to be able, and a lot of shame about what his addiction was. And at one point wanted to leave AMA. He ended up staying and completing. Holly did wonderful work with him. I met with him throughout his treatment. And just recently, you called and followed up with me. And Holly was so excited to hear how well he was doing. So
That's cool.
It's always wonderful. I do a lot of the clinical screens for people to make sure we're a good fit. We can keep people safe before they get here. And that's a question that I often, is anyone like me? Can you help someone like me? And the answer is usually yes. Because that is part of the mental illnesses that we see. That, not that I'm grandiose and I'm unique and special, but this is so severe and so debilitating to me that no one else is going through this. No one else can go through this because it's so hurtful. And when I tell people over the phone, yes, we can, and they come in and they see that there are other people that are suffering like them, it gives them a sense of relief that this is something I can get help for. This is not something I have to live with for however long I'm here on earth. So
That's why we do groups.
That's rad.
Yeah. That's why groups are so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And I have like such a privileged view of like our alumni. I stay in touch with handfuls of them, and they get in touch with me, and I got a year, I got 2 years, I'm in recovery, I'm doing this. And I think it was in the pandemic. I'm gonna share my favorite story now.
Okay.
And it has to do everything with what you all do, and not what I do, but certainly I get to reap the benefit of hearing the experience, and it just lights me up like a Christmas tree. But there was a guy in care who had been to multiple programs, but specifically like behavior modification programs. He was at a program called Prescott House in Arizona, which I'm very, very familiar with, but it's an all men's program, oftentimes centered around sex addiction and compulsive gambling. And they come in and they're very, very rigid. shame-based in my opinion. They make every one of them wear a bike helmet. They have to they have to drive these shitty bikes. And then when they don't have their bikes, they'll take their bikes and make them walk to meetings. And they only have certain areas in town they can even be in. Like they draw a circle around it. And if you go outside of that, you have to sit on tables. Tables is 8 hours. You just sit there and like write lines out of the big book. You can only get up to go to the bathroom. And so people still refer to this place, and I'm sure they do great work. But this individual had come to our program. And I was a little worried because I'm like, oh, this is like kind of a little more laid back,
right.
A little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more present, a little bit more caring. And sometimes that's difficult for folks that are struggling with substance use who've been in these programs. But I had this gentleman in my circle, peer group, and I asked him, I said, he was finishing up the program, and I said, what did you get out of this program? How was it? And with like tears in his eyes, he said something that I've heard so many times before, but it just like hit me, and I'm like, that's Peaks Recovery, man. And he said, I just learned that I'm perfect the way that I am. And I'm just like, buddy, let's go. And that was everything for me. And I know the work that you all do on a daily basis with individuals procures that response for a lot of people. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I'm grateful for the team. I'm grateful for what you all have created in the midst of some chaos and some intensity. And you all really mirror, I think, what the client experience can be and will be if they stick to their recovery one day at a time. So thank you both for coming on the show. We'll have to get you on again soon. Until next time.
Great, thank you.
Peace.